Okay, a gay priest, a cucked soldier, and a 12-year-old girl walk into a bar. And this isn't a joke. This is the introduction to the cast of Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman, who's an American author who wrote this really cool novel that I guess you could say that it is dark fantasy. There's some horror in there, but honestly, this is just a really cool fantasy book in a historical setting. This is the era of the Black Plague in France, so 1350s, something like that maybe. You'd think that this world would be really bleak, and it is, but this isn't the kind of almost pornographic grimdark that you would get out of, I don't know. Some of these modern fantasy books tend to get too deep into it to the point where it's really pandering. But this isn't an exercise in just eliciting sympathy from characters who are struggling through horrible times and events and just bad situations. I told you that there was a gay priest. This is for real. He's become an alcoholic after being caught in relations with another man. That doesn't go over well in 1350s France if you're a priest. He is basically tumbling along through life going to see his brother. He runs upon Thomas, who is a disgraced knight. I'm going to say he's the hero, the protagonist of this whole story. He's had everything taken from him after serving, including his wife, which becomes one of the best parts, at least in terms of satisfaction for the reader, later on in the book when he resolves the whole situation between the lord that took over his estate and his wife. Then you have Delphine, who is a very young girl who is in some pretty serious trouble. You might be able to guess what kind of situation a 12-year-old orphan girl might find themselves in when marauders are just marauding across the countryside with no kind of law and order. But they all join up, they get together. Delphine seems to have something going on, and the other characters, Thomas and Matthew the priest, they question this in a realistic way. She's trying to tell them that she sees angels and that they're guiding her to a city, which happens to be the place where Matthew's brother is, who he's trying to go see, and also where the Pope is. Along the way, they stumble through the French countryside, go into various cities, meeting various people. All kinds of stuff happens in between. And really one of the best parts of the book is just how these characters grow together. This sounds super cheesy, and I can't really put this into good words, but author does such a good job of portraying how these people with their own kinds of problems and their own weird, awful histories heal each other in a strange way, just by recognizing that they are not so much dependent on the help of the others, but their own healing is dependent on helping the others. The dialogue is quick and it's clever, and there's actually a few moments of pretty good humor going on here. Sort of adds a levity that you might not expect from something that is, going by what I've read online about this book, but it's touted as being dark, horror. Those segments are in there, and the contrast between the more lighthearted moments and the more touching moments between the characters and all the nastiness happening around them is really great, and either serve to enhance the other. I'll take a slight detour here, go down this one path before coming back, but fantasy and horror, they can be fun, especially in the modern day when they investigate the tropes that are present in their genres, because especially with fantasy, it becomes some kind of like a double reflection, the way that fantasy reflects what things are like to us by presenting an ideal in contrast, whereas subversions that invert that illusion, they say, no, in this fake world things wouldn't actually be like that, they'd be like this. We get cool stuff like the Elric saga, but some fantasy and horror synthesizes this kind of double inversion, and Between Two Fires does this super well by having the characters with real problems that make sense to regular people. Stuff like guilt, shame, lack of faith turn into nihilism, which turns into these destructive tendencies that inevitably circle back inward. That's what these people are dealing with, and it is cathartic to watch them go through this, not for the sake of enjoying their struggle not for relishing the darkness, but watching how things come together in a cohesive whole, even when it looks like they've been broken into so many pieces that can never be put back together. So I mentioned that this was occurring during the time of the Black Plague. There's something else going on here. This isn't just a regular plague. This is straight up Lucifer trying to kill a bunch of humans. So we have demons infesting France, and of course our heroes are going to run across these demons, and they get into some pretty awesome conflicts with these guys. The combat is gritty and it's stark, and this is a place, besides the dialogue and descriptions of stuff, where the prose is just killer. It's sharp, brutal, and fast, and I found out just recently as I was looking up Mr. Buehlman, the author here, that apparently he was a big Ren Fair enthusiast and also trained in stage combat. So I didn't know that while I was reading this, but there's definitely a sense conveyed here of the weight and heft of weapons and how injuries feel and how damage is dealt to flesh. I'm going to say, if you've ever played any of the Dark Souls games and you've felt how the game conveys that sense of like swinging a big ass sword or an axe into the flesh of a monster, you get something of an idea of what I'm talking about. That same sort of sense is conveyed in this story, particularly the times when Thomas gets into battles with demons that are all kinds of shapes and sizes, and the way that he deals with them is pretty cool. One of them he fights in the water, and he just hacks it and hacks it and hacks it, and that one is particularly visceral. There's another demon that attacks them with illusions, and so that's a completely different kind of battle. They even run up against a demon that they just can't fight, and they have to run away, which is something that you don't expect heroes to do. But there is no clever solutions to some of the problems that they run into here. They just do their best and keep pressing on. And I should add, another thing that I found out about the author here is that he's very well versed in French, speaks it fluently, has studied France to a great degree. And though I couldn't really tell because I'm not familiar with France, that has evidently informed his description of the world and the countryside that the heroes are traveling through. So the reason that everything feels so realistic is because it is. He's describing real places, real buildings, real bridges. All of it feels like it's actually taking place in the real world, and that makes these strange demonic encounters so much more gnarly because they're coming through into a place that we can recognize as being like, yeah, I could see myself walking down that alley, or I could see myself going into this building, sitting in this chair, laying in this bed, crossing this bridge. And this all culminates with a crazy plot near the end of the book, which I'm going to get into some minor spoilers here. What happens is that the Pope has been kidnapped and replaced by a demonic lookalike. This is all part of Lucifer's plot. And it really ramps up in the end when you have angels and demons battling each other, which has been going on the whole time. And this sort of ties into the lack of faith, or the at least questioning of faith, that Thomas and Matthew in particular are going through, because it looks like the demons are winning. There doesn't seem to be a way out for anybody. The Black Plague is ravaging humanity. The Pope has been replaced by a demon. You got demons coming through the city just wrecking stuff. There's no way that humans have a chance of fighting back against them. They do get some assistance from angels, but the angels aren't doing so hot. This is a great method for bringing me and you, the readers, into this sense of, where is God in all this, right? What are we supposed to do if we're faithful to God and we're on the side of good and we're just taking L's left and right? You want a sign. You want something to tell you, like, it's okay. Like, I have your back. I'm gonna help you out. Things are gonna turn out well in the end. We're gonna come through this. But the characters are just not seeing this. They're just not. And Thomas in particular has so many moments where you can imagine any normal person just turning away and saying, this is ridiculous, this is a ludicrous battle, I don't know what I'm doing here, I'm not going to win, everybody is on their own, because it's always been every man for himself anyway, and just walking away from it. this is what makes him a braver hero than, well, I'm not going to try to compare him to such as Conan or Cole, but because he's experiencing these very realistic doubts and trials, and he pushes through anyway, you're going to get some good stuff. I'll tell you that. By the end, you're going to feel something more than what you would from a normal high heroic fantasy story where the hero dominates in the end, be it through luck, skill, willpower, or sacrifice. Thomas has got all of those and more, and it's that intangible something that all these characters possess to keep plowing through the shit that the world is throwing at them that really, really makes you root for them and also inspires you to be almost primed for when those types of moments in your life show up, which you know what I'm talking about. I can't say the thing, but you know, because it's going to be different for all of us. But they'll hit you, and whether or not you hit back, whether or not you run away, whether or not you try to sneak by or solve it through some other means, it doesn't matter so long as you don't let it kill you. That's what it's all about here. I really wish I could talk more about why I'm saying this, but I refuse to give away spoilers for a book this cool. I just put my strongest, most heartfelt recommendation toward reading this. Doesn't even matter if you are a casual fantasy fan, or you're an in-depth fantasy fan, or you like horror, or you don't like any of those things. This is a really, really cool story. It's got everything that an adventure action fan would want. It's very, very emotionally, I'm going to say forceful, but not bludgeoning. It invites you in to its feeling and allows you to sit in it, stew in it, and really be a part of it as it's going on. And there's so much momentum in this book. I ripped through it a while ago, didn't do a review until now just because things have been busy. And that's where I'm going to conclude my talk about the book. I'm going to go ahead and throw some more stuff in here real quick. I will be continuing to do book reviews. My subscriber count keeps going up, which is something that I never expected to happen, but is really cool. I just hit 85 people here and there appreciate what I'm doing, or at least seem to, and I appreciate that because I just like sharing these kind of books with people. It's my favorite kind of thing to get into and talk to people about, and I love having discussions with it, and I just don't have a lot of people to talk about that with in person. So the fact that more people want to hear about it, it really invigorates me to keep going. And I'm always open for suggestions on stuff to read. Meanwhile, I'll keep throwing them out there and hope that you get motivated to pick some of these up because, man, these types of stories, they're not necessarily few and far between. You could read great fantasy books for the rest of your life and die well before you got through most of them. All the same, there's such a deluge of smut out there. I'm going to say smut because, like I used the word pornographic earlier, it's stuff that appeals to what you're programmed to enjoy, and stuff like Between Two Fires goes a step beyond that. So highly recommend it. Also want to thank everybody who's watched my videos, and I'm not going to ask anybody to subscribe. I just want to say thank you for doing so. So peace out, and look forward to some more book reviews and, of course, music coming from me soon.